are dry deserts. Others have other problems from the point of view of agricultural productivity. Next. On the next slide, we see an example from the modern day of a capital-intensive agricultural system, one in which the production of crops is increased by, experiments show, a factor of 10 greater than the most fertile land on Earth today. So, with a productive technology that can inexpensively make these structures, these greenhouse or glasshouse structures, the environmental control mechanisms necessary to produce these conditions, it will be possible to grow the same amount of food on 1/10 of the area of land. This would greatly reduce environmental impact. It would make agriculture independent of fluctuations in rainfall and in climate, and result in a much more reliable source of abundant food for the people of the world. Next. Another use of solar energy beyond growing plants is increasingly the production of electricity. The illustration on this slide shows the sort of solar photovoltaic electric production technology that has been in use in recent years. We're starting to see better technologies come along, but this illustrates the sort of systems that are economically competitive today. They're very expensive. They have been fragile, expensive to install, and thus far only practical in very limited applications. The next slide shows a prospect for the future that will become possible when we are much better at making things and are able to cover large areas with photovoltaics. So if I one click, the prospect is to be able to cover roads and the surfaces, the roofs of buildings and so on, with a layer of material that is thin, inexpensive, tough and abrasion resistant so that one could actually drive on it, but convert exposed areas to efficient photovoltaic generating surfaces. And again, inexpensively, a low cost per kilogram, and in this case a very low mass per unit area, a very thin layer on the order of a few microns, and able to produce solar energy that now, where now only heat results. Next slide. This is an illustration of from 2005 of the excess temperature above the historic trend that we saw in the world. A great warming in the Arctic, not as much change in the equatorial world, but as the Arctic changes, that will change the climate in the entire world. And this illustrates, of course, the growing problem of climate change, which is largely due to the increase of levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which in turn is largely because people burn carbon-rich material to generate energy. With inexpensive solar power, next, it will be possible to have a future that looks very different from what has been projected. The light-colored curves that are shown in the graph here are projections put together by the International Panel on Climate Change, which has projected scenarios for the future concentrations of carbon dioxide. And you can see that across the period from now through the 21st century, they're shown increasing far above the baseline level, the level shown at the bottom, which was what we saw before the industrial era began. And I should mention that the lowest curves there are low primarily because economic development is slow, because people do not become wealthy. So the optimistic scenarios for climate change that have been projected in the past are pessimistic scenarios with respect to human development. The green curve, however, is clearly something very, very different. It shows a time when the carbon dioxide levels go down because carbon dioxide is being removed from the atmosphere rather than being added. To do that will require two developments. One is mechanisms for binding carbon dioxide molecules from the air, and the other one is taking those and compressing them to a high density so that they can be stored, so-called carbon sequestration technology. To do this requires an enormous amount of power. About 4 trillion watts of power for 10 years is enough to do the job. That is an amount of power that is roughly equal to the total amount of electric power consumed by the human race today worldwide. Next slide. This one click. The slide here shows the Earth, and on there you can now see a small red square. That square represents the area, the total area, if it were all in one place, of a solar array that could generate the 4 trillion watts of power. So, if we were able to construct solar power generating facilities that covered that much area, there would be enough power available to, if you had one of them, to supply all of the Earth's needs for electricity, and another would be enough to provide the power required to remove all of the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, all of the excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere in 10 years. The reason that such a project is not practical today is that the human race is not good at making things. Nature shows, biology shows, that molecular scale machinery, nanoscale machinery, can inexpensively put molecules together to make intricate products, including more molecular machinery. And the human race today can't do that. For all of the pride in high technology, there is still a fundamental capability that physics tells us is possible, that nature illustrates is possible, that we do not yet have, but that I believe can be developed in a time frame that can solve major problems, including the global warming problem. Next, please. So, as I said, a few words on the path forward, getting from where we are today to this kind of advanced technology. Next. Yes, this slide illustrates, you can see the letters IBM. Each of those dots is a single atom. Quite a few years ago, in 1990, this work was demonstrated, and it shows the ability to use